Hello there. Welcome back to my playlist where we talk all things astrocartography and locational astrology. If you haven't been here before, be sure to check out the entire playlist. There's tons of free information as well as on my website. If you're interested in astrology and you're already familiar with astrocartography, that's where we take your natal birth chart, your astrology birth chart, and wrap it around the globe. And we can see how your astrology interacts with different parts of the earth. Another technique within a locational astrology that's less popular, maybe not as well known, is called geodetic projections. Sometimes it's called geodetic equivalents. I'm Kim Mott, and welcome to my astrocartography playlist. This has been around for millennia and is a totally separate technique from astrocartography, even though it looks quite similar. I'm going to show you a striking demonstration of how accurate this can be. The main way that we use geodetic projection is actually for what we call mundane astrology. It comes from the Latin term in mundo, which means in the world. So it doesn't really mean like mundane, boring or something like that. It means what's going on a global stage. So it's actually the astrology of the location, of the geography, of the place, rather than a personal astrology that's being projected onto the globe. It is the celestial sphere astrology being projected onto the globe. I was recently in Rome and I went to the Vatican and actually was looking very closely at some of the very old globes that they have on display there from the 14th century, 15th century, showing really good examples of how geodetic maps and global mundane astrology has been used for quite a long time. Locational astrology is nothing new. There were some new techniques developed in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, especially when software started coming out, and it was much easier to do these really enormous calculations, trigonometry, things beyond my talents, started becoming more and more prevalent and popular. But those are based on ancient techniques that come all the way back from the Hellenistic era. So if you hear someone telling you some guy named Jim Lewis in the 70s invented locational astrology or astrocartography, really what he did was coin the term astrocartography for the technique where we project your astrology. This technique that I'm going to show you now, I'm going to show you, I love doing historical events and past things and looking at the astrology of the place, both on the geodetic map, which is the astrology of the location, and the astrology of the actual moment in time. If it was a big event or a big news story or something like that, or a big historical event are my favorite to look up. I recently was in Rome, like I said, and actually did the last walk of Julius Caesar and timed it and actually found within the astrology of place, both on the geodetic map and within astrocartography, the exact moment. So I'll show that on my channel later. But this time I'm going to show you what's going on in the area of Los Angeles, California in the United States. It's been world news for many reasons beyond just the actual violence that's been happening in a very small part of Los Angeles for a very short period of time. But because it seems like the autocratic government there is also testing out the waters for, martial law and things like that. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on the map. And this looks exactly like, if you've seen especially some of my videos or other videos on the internet, this looks a lot like an astrocartography map. But it actually is what we call the geodetic equivalents or geodetic projection map. And so if I toggle between the two, you can see that at this exact time that I have here, this is what the astrocartography looks like. Again, this would be this exact moment at this exact time in this exact location. It's almost like casting a birth chart for this moment or an event, which is a thing you can do. It doesn't have to be a human being or person. It can be the birth chart of an event. I'm going to use both techniques, but I'm going to focus in on the geodetic equivalents because you can see that these geodetic equivalents don't move very quickly. If I take it hour by hour and go a few hours forward on the 6th of June, 2025, you can see not much is going to move. You'll see a few things move like the moon, which will come by quicker later in a few days. But hour by hour, it's really not going to do anything. Now, if I go back and I do the same thing with the astrocartography map, you can see how important a birth time is with astrocartography. An hour later, there's huge shifts. There's big changes. So on this day, I'm going to come back now to the geodetic projection. This is what was going on, and this will last days to months, depending on which line we're looking at. This line right here is actually going to last for years, going back and forth in retrograde and direct motion over and over and over across California and this area of the United States for more years, up until about 2028, 2029. So I expect more disruption in this area because Uranus isn't necessarily a malefic planet, meaning it's not going to bring a lot of harm, but it brings a lot of sudden changes. It can be explosive in nature, particularly when combined with Pluto or Mars, the god of war, Mars, or intense personal power and deep transformation of Pluto. These kind of energy signatures can really, on a map, show where there could be violence or there could be just kind of explosive things. There could be massive transformation that especially kind of happens in sudden bursts because Uranus does these sudden surprise changes. It also rules electricity, it rules the airwaves, things like that. So this is probably going to be broadcast a lot. You could also see that it crosses here. So Uranus is crossing with Pluto up by San Francisco. So I expect this whole zone to continue to have some major issues because these are two outer planets. They're going to take a long time to move away from this area in the geodetic map. And then Mars will move a lot quicker. It's an inner planet. It's not as far out as these guys, but it will be here for a while. And I'm going to show you a demonstration of that now. So this date here, this is in European format. So here's the date, the 6th of June, the month, 2025. And a few hours before this, you're going to see that the LAPD actually declared it an unlawful gathering. The protests of solidarity for immigrants who were being detained and kidnapped off the streets by ICE and things like that. They began protesting. Of course, then, as if you've ever been anywhere near a protest, you'll notice that here come the disruptors, the ones who want to cause the violence and the rioting. They'll even come in from other cities, and it's kind of a thing. It's like their hobby or something. So that happened. There's also been a lot of unrest because there's so much homelessness and things like that. So I feel like there's just kind of like this explosive configuration here. It's more than just one thing. It seems like a real big buildup, especially with such a outer planet configuration. A couple other things I want to show you though. Again, Mars on the descendant means it's coming through other people too. A lot of this aggressiveness and this warlike aggression and can even be violent nature is really being triggered by other people because it's on the descendant, which shows up in that 7th house of other people. If you're not too familiar with astrology, I'm going to explain a few things, but some of this is going to be maybe over your head. I'll try to explain as much as I can, but this is also going to be really interesting for astrologers or people who have studied it and been enthusiastic about it for a while. A couple other lines that I have on here that normally you wouldn't see if I was doing a personal reading for somebody, but I do use for mundane astrology, is this is a syzygy. So I have the lines turned on for previous lunation cycles and eclipses, solar and lunar eclipses, things like that. So you can see that the previous full moon culminates here on the midheaven within range here. I do a little wider orb for mundane astrology than I would for personal as well. It just tends to play out that way over time, I've noticed. And then this is a syzygy. So that's the either conjunction or opposition with the moon. That landed right in range of Los Angeles, the last one that happened. Current mundane cycle, currently the Jupiter-Saturn configuration is in a square, but this in a mundane astrology shows where the last conjunction of those two planets were. So when those were conjunct some time ago, they're currently a square again, that's when that cycle started. So it shows where the cycle started, which comes in handy when we look at that in a little bit. I'm going to show you something else around that. But it happens to have its ascendant of this actual big transit of Jupiter conjunct the Saturn. So Jupiter it can represent law. It can represent kind of global thinking too. And the whole world is watching this. Conjuncting, meaning it's like right on top at the same degree or within a couple of degrees of Saturn, which can represent the authorities. It can represent constriction and cracking down and those kind of things when we're talking on global astrology. So you could see a full moon. You kind of know what happens on full moons a lot. You've got a syzygy, you've got Mars, you've got Uranus, you've got this conjunction of these major planets, and you have Pluto. So it's not an easy configuration, that's for sure. We can get into a little bit more, but I just wanted to show you that before I talk about some dates. Right around this time of day, on the 6th of June, the LAPD actually issued a tweet and other announcements saying that they have now declared it an illegal gathering right around this time. I'm going to go in like 12-hour increments here and just go forward for the next several days so you can see what's happened over the past week and a half. I'm posting this right now on June 16th, 2025. I had looked at this just privately myself a few months ago. I check in about once a quarter on the geodetic map just to see what areas might be affected by certain things and eclipses and things like that, and major transits. And I kind of just expected even more disruption with this area. This planet here, configuration actually came into orb right before it came into, where it starts influencing this area of the world, right before the huge fires there. And now it represents certain energies. It can come out as a fire, an explosion. It can come out, particularly when conjoined with Mars, and some of this lunation stuff. It can be, people doing it, or it can be violence or aggression, things like that. So let's watch it in 12-hour increments. You can see what's going to happen. Everything is going to progress east unless it happens to be in retrograde, then it would appear to go west, but we're going to watch as things go. So here, actually, I'm going to go back on the 7th of June at noon. So in between this little time frame I have here, if we go 6 hours forward, right around noon, 12:24 p.m. is when the news report came out about tear gas being used and a clash being happened at Paramount and with deputies and things like that. About 8 hours later is when Trump decided to send in the National Guard. Again, maybe testing the waters for martial law in the future. He knew it was going to be ruled illegal, but he wanted to see if the court system could side with him now that he's stacked the deck, and give him the authority to actually deploy troops on U.S. soil, which has never really happened before in modern history. Okay, so that's on June 7th. We're going to keep going. Maybe we'll do 6-hour increments so you can see a little bit better what's happening. You can see, again, those geodetic lines are not going to move very quickly. Like I said, that Mars is going to move a little quicker. You're going to start seeing the moon on the MC coming in. Again, MC is about public. It could be the public authorities, that kind of thing. In mundane astrology, we consider the moon not only still to represent emotions and things like that, but it actually represents the people. So it's very interesting that the moon starts configuring in around this time as well. I want to show you a specific time on the 8th of June, around 2 hours before this or so, right around the 5 to 6 o'clock hour. Again, this is the European date format and time format. So right around probably 5 to 6, because I don't have the exact timing, but I looked at news reports. I'm sure it's somewhere on a police report of when those Waymo cars, remember how they stuck those on? That picture's gone around the world over and over and over and over. It's not a sustained event, something that kept happening over and over, but it is something that happened at a specific time. And what's amazing about social media is they have timestamps. And so as astrologers, we can actually look up the exact timing. And as a locational astrologer like I am, I can actually also look up which locations were being affected during certain transits and timing. So you can see right at this time, the moon had come into orb and gotten involved with this situation. And then if we do some, minutes, maybe we'll do like 10-minute increments. You can see the moon, because it moves quickly, is going to cross over Pluto, and then it's going to kind of continue coming until it actually sweeps over Los Angeles itself. What's interesting is because of that National Guard deployment, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, it's crazy that even people in other countries know what our governor names are, because this really is world news. The whole world is watching. These are major outer planets involved, which means that affects a lot of people. Those are even generational planets and things like that. So if I want to go forward some hours now, I'm going to look at we're going to get us up to midnight here, and at right after midnight on the 9th of June, so now we're on the 9th of June, at midnight 40, so 12:40 a.m., is when Gavin Newsom officially sent a letter and posted on social media a letter to Trump saying that his actions were illegal, this kind of thing. Look at that. It's right as the people in the authority house, the MC, is crossing with the personal power and the oath of expressing power on Pluto. So right as that crosses, right off the coast of Los Angeles, is when he posts this letter, calling Trump out and what he feels is an illegal act. Then a few hours later, you can see that a few hours later is when the LAPD issues another warning to people to stop coming to the area and spectating because of those batteries in the Waymo cars, the electric cars being burned. There were toxic fumes in the air. Those fires can take forever to put out because you have to let them burn out. I watched a video once on like what happens if a lithium ion battery catches fire. If you add water to it or other substances, it makes it worse. So they actually just have to wait often for these to burn out. So you can see that it's been still happening for hours and hours when the LAPD is telling people stay out of the area. This is really dangerous as far as toxic fumes go. So you can see about 10 minutes later is when they issue that tweet around 3:26 a.m. And then about an hour later, we can see, maybe about 2 hours later, we can see that Gavin Newsom starts appearing all over the news. At 4 in the morning, 4:57 a.m. is when they post this news story, an interview of him publicly calling Trump a liar and saying that just because of this isolated incident in the area of Los Angeles doesn't mean, that he should send in troops. The troops are really indicated by, remember how I said Mars is the god of war, and that was, taking away states' rights and overstepping and that kind of thing. So he's all over the news, calling Trump names, being and this is as this moon is coming toward. So again, almost like an emotional response, but it's on behalf of the people, that kind of vibe. I'm going to keep going by hours because there's a few more things that happen over the next few days. We can just kind of see as this moves, see how fast the moon goes. When I go 12 hours ahead, you can see that one's the one that moves the most quickly. Now we've got another, a big emotional configuration here, kind of an explosive type. And so this is going on in the media. Trump's responding, Gavin Newsom, like the late night comedians, everybody. I'm living in France, or I'm right now visiting in France, but I'm living overseas, and I've been here a couple months. As I watch it play out, I'm just seeing the clips of just how people are responding, and it's so on brand for this astrology. It's insane. And then as some days move on, and we get over to the 12th of June, we see that this goes to court. So on the 12th of June, a federal judge rules it illegal. The judge says that this is an illegal act that Trump did. It's overstepping his authority in the executive branch. And so they halt the deployment of the National Guard and the Marine troops. It just, as this is kind of coming out of orb, it's still in orb, but it's kind of coming out of the scene. What's interesting around that time too, and by interesting, I don't mean good necessarily, is that there's some other, starting kind of riling up violence in other areas too. Remember how I said this is crossing up here? Whenever you have two planetary lines crossing, even in the geodetic map, that supercharges both of them even more. These lines just mean things are supercharged. If I turn on the orb, you can see that these things are all overlapping. They're all in influence. So you don't have to be directly on a line for it actually to be influential in the location. And then each person's unique personal astrology in their own chart is going to interact with this imprint of the place location astrology as well. So beyond the idea of like synastry with the birth chart of a location, which is a possibility to do too, which is interesting. It's just harder because even countries don't know their exact birth time, and we need that for astrocartography. This will kind of show us, if we overlay our own birth chart on top of the geodetic map, how we might personally interact. So it might activate certain configurations in certain people's charts that may do things they normally wouldn't decide to do if they're in this location. So this federal judge rules it illegal. They send it on now to the next day. They send it to an appeals court, and that appeals court just halts the decision until they hear the case again. And so it's kind of this back and forth. It really feels like a battle within all of the things that are configured here. Again, this can be around law and the authorities and what is the law, what are the constrictions that we can do. Another interesting thing, and I'm going to show you on the astrocartography map the timing too for a few of these events, because you can see how this is more like a theme, an underlying undercurrent, a layer. They're diving into the pool of this. But then the timing is shown by astrocartography, the other technique in locational astrology that I'll show. Another thing, unfortunately, that happened on this, you can see that right where I was talking about with this crossing up here, just above Sacramento, when the No Kings protests were happening, a car drove into the crowd in that area. What's really interesting about this configuration is violent. I'm not saying it's good or something. It's just that it's like so on point for the astrology, and that it's in range of this as well. It's even closer into this transit of Jupiter conjunct the Saturn. What I want to point out is right around the same time that that happened, there was a similar, almost exactly the same situation over in Culpeper, Virginia, which is almost exactly on this line over here. It's like right in here. So you have, a Mercury line over here. You have Chiron in orb as well, which is another outer slow-moving planetary body. But you've got that same transit, that major outer transit that's happening. Remember, over on California side, it was on the ascendant, so it's coming through like the first house. This is coming through other people. It's the other side of that ascending, so it ascends and then descends, and this transit is landing right over here. We're almost an exact same event happened at the same time on the same day. There's also a previous solar eclipse that's in range of here, as well as a full moon on the IC. So very like emotionally charged stuff here. Just wanted to show on the map how things play out. You can see that there's other places where other things are happening, but these guys are all hanging out together, making some pretty difficult circumstances play out. Again, I was going to show you this is the astrocartography version of that, and you can see that this changes up, but you'll watch how fast this moves. So if we go back to like those times where Governor Newsom starts standing up for his state and saying, no, this is not like legal, you're overstepping, that kind of thing. On the 9th, when that news cycle starts really ramping up, you can see that at the time Governor Newsom starts publicly lashing out about this, that the sun is on the IC. When you have like a king or a governor or something like that, or the topic around the idea of kings and governorship and the land that it's on the IC, that's interesting that as soon as he started issuing that letter to Trump saying you've overstepped your authority, we've got the sun here. You've also got the descending Mars, and it's more of this lunation stuff. The next full moon is landing here at that time. And so you could see really, really interesting stuff about timing and location using both geodetic projection or geodetic equivalent, whatever you want to call it, and astrocartography. If you found this interesting, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Helps the algorithm know that you liked it and helps suggest it to other people who would also maybe be interested. If you have any questions, or if you want to see some other events, like I said, I'm going to be doing the Julius Caesar assassination by senators in Rome in 44 BC on the Ides of March in the Julian calendar. I'll be publishing that one soon. That's already filmed. And then I also will, in the future do other ones. So if you have ideas of historical events or major news events that we can kind of pinpoint an actual time, we can look at both the geodetic and the timing on the astrocartography. I also do readings, so if you want to do a personal reading on your own astrocartography and this has piqued your interest and you want somebody who do the work for you and explain it, my books are open. I usually have availability within a couple of weeks. There's also tons of free resources on my YouTube and on my website, kimmott.com. I'm also over on Threads. You can come say hi at Kim Goes There. I'm also on Instagram, but I haven't used it very much. Mostly people just message me there, but you can follow me on either. Happy astro travels.